Good morning and welcome to Ag Talking Raw. Now, I haven't done one of these in a while. Just for the simple reason I'm busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. And I don't think anybody's ever seen an ass-kicking contest that involved a man with one leg. Right? Yeah, something like that maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so I guess I'm going to do a crop update and what's going on and what's not really going on and what should be going on. So I'll start with the. I don't think I actually had talked about the hell. Well, I might have talked about the hell that I went through with this dry weather. So anyway, all right. So I'll do an overview. That'll make things more up to speed, and my ramblings will be overlooked or whatever. Because I'm kind of, I got things to do right now, and I'm thinking, God, am I going to have time to get this thing up and running? Anyway, so let's start with last year. Last year, after I got done with corn, I was very disappointed in last year's corn crop. I was, but as all farmers, or 99% of farmers, do look to the next year. About this time of year, they start looking into next year. What did I do? What can I do different? What can I do that will offset, some of the struggles that we've had to get this crop to where it is today? And the whole point in this line of thinking is to actually make money. Everybody wants to make money in agriculture, and it is increasingly difficult to make money in agriculture. Just because of rising costs in inputs, seed costs, herbicide costs, and fertilizer costs. And, of course, now we've got everybody talking about how the weather is changing, and I don't see it that way. I'm out in the weather all the time. We haven't hit 100 degrees yet in New Jersey. I know out west they've had 100-degree weather. Actually, it's been quite cold. Mid 80s in the day and 60s at night in the last month and a half. And before that, it was 60s in the day and 40s in the night. And I got corn that's struggling to come through the ground at that point. The wheat dried up, died from the bottom up instead of the top down, like wheat really should die. Or mature. Wheat is supposed to mature from the top down. The heads start to turn and the stalk stays green, and that's where you have the fight to get it dry enough to get it through the combine. And I would have no problem drying wheat, but what I wanted to do was to actually kill the wheat off once the head dried out, or matured. I wanted to kill the stalk so I could get through there a week or two earlier. But because of the drought that we went through, 6 weeks of zero rain, and I think we had only, here she comes. Huh?
Oh, you're doing your thing.
I'm always doing my thing.
Give me my sugar testing, please.
Oh, good. You want your sugar daddy? Is that what you want?
Stop.
You want the sugar daddy?
Get.
Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about the wheat. So because the wheat died from the bottom up, and then we started to get rain, those stalks they weren't green anymore, so there was nothing to kill with glyphosate, but they still funneled water up that stalk to the maturing wheat, which was fine. I mean, we didn't have a great yield. It was 60. It actually averaged approximately 60. It was a little bit more. I'm rounding it down to 60 bushels.
That's it, 60.
60 bushels to the acre. Well, that's actually not terrible. I think New Jersey's average is only like 42 or something like that. Yeah, it's not a high yield. So we did okay. And it's still in the bin, and I have to get rid of it. It's just the price went way up, and then it came down, and it's tough marketing this year. It's tough. I do have to market some corn, and we'll talk about that a little later. But as far as the wheat's concerned, I think I'm just going to go ahead and make the phone call in the middle of this week and see if I can get sell it all. I'm going to sell all the wheat all at once. Goodbye. See you later, because I got corn coming.
Wait.
I can't believe that. So, you're doing all right. So my wife checks her sugar. She had we think it was Lyme disease, personally, right?
Yeah.
She got bit by a tick, and it was red too, wasn't it? It was infected, kind of. So, anyways, we Dr. Pandy here prescribed doxycycline, and it made her feel really crappy for a couple of weeks, right? The first week was really bad, and then the next week wasn't so bad. So, and now her sugar, she's testing her sugar because her mother has diabetes to a point, right? Just pre-diabetes. No, she's diabetic.
She's diabetic.
She's diabetic. She doesn't take insulin. She takes the pills. And thankfully, because insulin is extremely expensive, Teresa took her to the doctor the other day because she's having problems getting it under control. And it was like, the doctor's like, you don't want that. You don't want insulin. You take insulin, it's like $900 a month just for insulin. So anybody out there who's got diabetes, God help you, man. This freaking New World Order isn't working out for us, you know. So anyway, she's on the pills and she's got a monitor. And so Teresa was monitoring hers, and she did the doxycycline, and now she's at normal, right? I'd say abnormal or below normal, but she's just at normal right now. She's giving me, you give me the finger?
No.
You want to give me kisses?
No, you're
Give me a hug?
doing your thing.
I want to kiss. Can I have a
You're
kiss?
doing your thing. You're showing my ass.
I like your ass.
My ass.
Do that again. I got to move over so people can see your ass. Bad girl. Anyway, no, sex sells, you know. Anyway, I'm not trying to sell my wife, no way. And she was covered up nicely. Anyway, so with that wheat, I wanted to double crop corn and beans into it. Yes, corn. I could have easily put this corn in behind this wheat if it would have came off between the 20th and the 25th of June. Yeah, sounds late, right? Well, it'll affect the test weight and the yield to a point. You really don't want to go too far beyond the 25th of June. I don't like planting corn after the 20th of June anyway here. But anyway, I did put 115 acres of corn in after wheat. The first wheat that came off, I had a goal. And my goal was, if I take this wheat off and it's before the 5th of July, that's my birthday, if it's before the 5th of July, I will plant corn on that property. The reason I wanted to plant corn there is because there's quite a bit of deer pressure there. And there's quite a bit of deer pressure there, and I hate deer pressure. Deer pressure it's tough to get under control. Corn can handle it a little better than say soybeans do. I mean, deer can trim leaves, and you know it'll still produce almost a full crop. But the deer are there. They're not the end of the world, but I didn't want to put soybeans in there and fight them with Penergetic and fight them because Penergetic, as well as it does work, it is expensive. And you're not going to get all the deer off of there. There are going to be these resilient bastards that will come out in the daytime and just chew their way through it. Anyway, so you've got that, as far as the Penergetic works. And I like the Penergetic. It does work. Penergetic BWV, you can look it up online and see what all it does. It's not just a deer repellent either. It does sweeten the soil and spurs some biological activity in the soils as well with P and K. I've used them all, and I'm quite happy with the P and the K and the BWV. In conjunction, they all work together. One works on the soil biology, the other one works on the plant cell structures, and the other one works on the mental status of the deer population. So I like them, and they do seem to work. They're not the cheapest things in the world, but adding bushels to your crop and breaking down the residue is always good. And if you watch my other channel, One Lonely Farmer, I did a short on the double crop beans, and they look pretty good. They look actually phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. We've got the moisture. We're starting to get some decent heat days, and the beans are growing quite well. But anyway, so this kind of threw, and the corn looks phenomenal. It's almost shoulder high now. That was planted on July 5th, so it's been in the ground a month. Wet ground, and we got inches and inches of rain. There was a struggling struggling spots in these fields that were, what are you going to do, So anyway, with that being said, I have a little over 1,300 acres of corn in the ground. I'm just going to say 1,300 acres of corn. There was a spell that I did not plant in June that I should have been planting, but I couldn't because it was so dry that the seeds sat in the ground for 16 days before we got enough moisture to sprout it. And when I realized it was that dry and there was no rain in the forecast, I just parked the planter. And waited for rain, and then I finished up what I had to finish up, which really wasn't that much. It was just a few hundred acres. But if I had continued to plant on through the dry spells and just closed my eyes and went on about making hay and spraying, and I could have easily done 3,000 acres of corn, which I was not going to do, no way. And that brings me to the next subject, which is goals in life. So, goals. We all have to have goals. If you don't set goals for yourself, even if they're unattainable goals, like this is, and that's really the best kind of a goal that you want to have, is a goal that you feel you set the bar high. Here, you want to set that bar high. And there's a lot of people on here that just are perfectly happy being complacent in what they do. It's like, well, my father farmed 1,000 acres and my grandfather farmed 500, and I'm just going to farm 1,000 acres because it worked for my dad. And it's going to be a corn, soybean, wheat rotation, and I'm going to do it exactly the way they did it because they were successful. Well, that's good. That's okay. If that's how you feel you're going to run your career, is the same exact way your father or your grandfather ran his business and his career. But things change, and a lot of things change that are uncontrollable. Some people say that the weather's changing. I don't see that the weather is changing. I think that it's just a bunch of hoopla. We are on a cycle, like we used to talk about the sun a lot. Like solar flares and solar winds and the impact that has on this planet. And those are not taxable things. You can't tax the sun and get it to, go into submission and quit throwing high levels of solar radiation at us. And that's really what is going on right now, is we are in a heightened, like the worst solar flare, solar wind, solar assault. Let's just call it a solar assault. It's higher than it's ever been. And that has nothing to do with CO2 carbon, which is a joke anyway. Of all the things that these retarded politicians can come up with is CO2 carbon, CO2 gas. And if you are watching this and you're thinking, oh, well, CO2 is poison. No. Well, it is if there's too much of it, but there's not too much of it. We are carbon-based life forms. We intake oxygen. We exhale CO2. Trees, plants, and all the other vegetation that takes CO2 and converts it back into oxygen is how the world works. Now, the higher the levels of CO2, the better things grow. Believe it or not, corn, soybeans, trees, vegetation in general need that CO2, and the higher the levels of CO2 in our atmosphere, the better they grow. So, yeah. It's like, huh? Really? Oh my God. And the majority of people on this planet think that CO2 levels are rising to like 50% of the air that we breathe. There's a lot of people that think, oh, well, it's got to be at least 40-50% by now is CO2 gas. I'm just choking on the air that I'm breathing. When the reality is it's 0.03%. You hear that? 0.03% of our atmosphere is CO2 gas. Now, depending on the time of year that it is, it will fluctuate between 0.03 and 0.04, because during the winter months, the trees in the northern hemisphere and the plants and everything that was growing no longer converting CO2 to oxygen and lowering that CO2 gas. Oh, and then there's the intermittent 25 volcanoes that are erupting at all times, spewing more CO2 carbon into the atmosphere in one 10-hour period each than all human activity does in an entire year. And that's a fact too. Just look that stuff up. So when you see a politician and he's talking climate change and we can tax the hell out of the climate change and make it so that we are zero impact, just think about that volcano down in Hawaii, Maui, that's burning the shit out of that island, that volcanic island, and just remember that every 10 hours that thing is spitting out more CO2 gas, more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere than a whole year of all human activity on this planet. Now, there are pollutants that they can, if they want to complain about pollutants, I'm okay with that. You know, like CFCs, you know, going off into the atmosphere, CFC, chlorofluorocarbons, any polymers, plastic that they allow to, you know, escape the scrubbers in a factory, any of those harsh chemicals that, you know, really not only cause cancer in laboratory rats, but they cause cancer in the people that work in those plants. My sister worked for a company called Firmenich years ago, and there was a 30-some-odd-year-old man that she worked with. I think she had a crush on him, I don't know. He was a little older than her, and he went to the doctor, and his body was ravaged with cancer because of all the chemicals that he was dealing with on a daily basis in his job. And just kind of, I don't know if that company's still in business or not. I really don't care. But, you know, they claimed that it was from there, and she left there shortly then after because, well, you know, she just didn't like the idea of getting cancer from the job that she was getting paid a mediocre wage for. But that's okay. You know, life moves us on. So CO2 gas or carbon and pollutants are two very, very different things. And yeah, plastic is a big pollutant. You know, we used to use glass, right? Glass bottles. When I was a kid, Gatorade came in a glass bottle. Iced tea, anything. If you bought it, it came ketchup, glass bottle. All this stuff came in glass. Mayonnaise, glass. Everything was glass. Now it's plastic. So now the products that were in glass, which was sand that they had melted down and turned into glass, which is fine. That sand, to recycle it, you just crush it up and remelt it, reform it. That's where your green and brown glass came from, was recycled glass. But plastic bottles, plastic water bottles. If you ever noticed that a plastic water bottle has an expiration date on it, right? Like, this water will expire in 9 months. You know, well, how does water expire? It's been on this planet for millions of years, billions of years. Okay, so there's plastic. Well, plastic or water does not expire. It's in plastic. So if you keep water in plastic bottles, that plastic actually starts to break down. It deteriorates in sunlight, and then just being in contact with stuff makes it deteriorate. And water, you are drinking it, and as it deteriorates, that plastic leaches into the water till it becomes a toxic level. And people anymore, when I was a kid, we drank out of a garden hose. You let it run for a few seconds, let the water run out that was in the hose. It was warm anyway. And then we drank out of it, you know, it was no big deal. Or you took the hose off and you drank right from the spigot, which was brass or copper or whatever, and or bronze if you had a good one. You know, and then you just drank the water, it was good. Or you went to the creek and got Giardia. A drink out of the water. But whatever, we were tougher back then than we are today. The plastic that you're consuming every day in soda, in water, in tea, you could drink it out of an aluminum can. That's not nearly as bad. But at one point, when I was a kid, there was a bunch of aluminum pots and pans down in the ditch. My grandfather took them down there and threw them out in the ditch. And I used them as targets, shot them all to pieces. So, years later, I said to my grandma, I was like, why were all those pans down there? She said, oh, your grandfather, he had a blood test after his heart attack in 1977. And they had a blood test and he had toxic levels of aluminum, and it was because of the frying pans that we were using. I was like, the pans, the pots, the pans, because everything was a big push to use aluminium or aluminum. And, you take aluminum toxicity is not good. And if you want to go on with aluminum oxide that is in the spraying techniques that they use to keep our planet cooler or whatever, manipulate the weather, in my opinion, those are aluminum oxides. So, yeah, you're probably thinking I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I have firsthand seen these planes spraying. They're spraying. I've watched them turn on the spray. I've watched them turn off the spray. I watched them spray this way. I watch them spray this way, and then it just dissipates and makes a nice hazy day, which I don't like hazy days. Ugh. Hazy days are not good. So, but whatever. These aluminum toxicities, this stuff we're putting into our bodies. You want to cook on something? Cook on cast iron. Cast iron. There are so many anemic men and women in this world. Not so much men, or male species. Men bleed. We cut ourselves, we do shit like that, and we bleed. Women bleed monthly, so they don't ever have to worry about having an iron overload, but most women are anemic because they're just not getting the iron that they need. It's not in our foods anymore. We used to have high iron in spinach, and lettuce had iron and stuff in it, in the greens that we ate. And today, just because of different farming practices, the iron is no longer available to those plants because we're killing our soils with high levels of fungicides and insecticides. And, if you don't like listening about that, I just won't talk about it much anymore, but it does negatively impact the health of the plants or the quality of the grain and the food that you eat comes from, or the meat, the pork, the chicken, and the beef that you eat, turkey, and whatever else. If you're going to eat horse, you can eat horse. I would love to eat a horse again. That was good. I ate horse when I was in Belgium. So the quality of the grains that are coming off the field are not what it was, say, back in the 1940s and 50s, because prior to then, we used, manure to fertilize, a little bit of nitrogen, P and K were obtained through rotations, like corn, wheat, hay, and then put it back onto manure. We had grazing. We don't graze anymore. Everything's in feedlots. So the biology in the soil is diminishing. And I'm sure if you're in, say, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, any of these states, and you take soil tests or go back on the soil tests that your grandparents took and then look at the soil tests that you have today on the same fields, if you have any of those records, you will be shocked how your organic matter has declined. And and that's from intensive farming practices, over tillage and stuff like that. And when you learn about this stuff, you can actually stop it and reverse it and actually build organic matter and reduce your dependency on those very expensive commercial fertilizers. I have started down this path. It's like smoking, you can do a cold turkey, but you're going to have negative effects at first. It's going to take 5 years before things really start to turn around and benefit you in a positive light. And there you go. That's just one of those things that you have to deal with if you're going to. And I'm not saying go organic. By no means am I going to ever go organic. I mean, there is a happy medium between organic and commercial agriculture. Use the herbicides, but select herbicides that aren't so detrimental to the life in the soil. That's just a very basic thing. Like, do I really need to put fungicide down? Or do I need to promote the fungus that's in the soil naturally that will actually thrive and live off of the fungus that is, bad? or insects. And, there's, for every bad insect, there's like 1,000 good insects that will keep those in check. But when you use an insecticide, it kills them all. And then, it's it's a battle then, because what thrives faster, what reproduces the fastest? The bad stuff, like alfalfa weevil. You go out and you spray alfalfa weevil, or a potato leaf hopper or something like that, and you kill everything. And then 15 days later, you're back out there spraying again, because the bad shit came back, and there's nothing good to keep it in check. Pollination strips. I've got sunflowers here and there. You use pollination strips, and the good insects live and thrive in those pollinators and in pollination strips. And then they go out, and you don't have to worry about potato leaf hoppers and stuff like that, because they're kept in check by the good stuff. So tar leaf spot, right? Tar leaf spot's a really bad thing right now out west. Lay off the fungicide. Lay off the fungicide. You stop killing the fungus in the soil. You kill the fungus in the soil, and you're going to have these problems, and there's nothing you're going to do to stop it. If you continue with those fungicides. And there's a lot of people that don't agree with me and think I'm crazy, but it's just basic good versus evil. Evil takes over, and then they start a war. And then it takes 10 times the good guys to go over and kick the evil's ass out of whatever country they have overtaken. And it's the same in the world, good versus evil. Evil thrives when it's allowed. And then it takes a lot of good to remove the evil. So evil weeds, evil weeds. What are evil weeds? Oh my God, we got glyphosate resistant giant ragweed. We got glyphosate resistant ragweed and mare's tail, and now lamb's quarter, and all this stuff. If you look at these plants, okay, so now I'm going to go down this path. If we look at these plants, they're big, leafy plants. Not so much the mare's tail, but lamb's quarter, big leaves. Ragweed, just shading leaves. You get giant ragweed, and they're huge. You get these resistant plants, they're covering the soil. Why are they covering the soil? Because it's a response. It's a response to, it's a response to a sick and dying soil biology. So if you watch the Star Wars movies, the first, chapter 1, when little Anakin Skywalker, they discover him, and you've got the what the heck was his name? Anyways, Ewan McGregor and what was the other one? Anyways, these two Jedis, and they talk about the Symbian Circle, of life. They were not making that shit up. It's true. There are billions of different types of bacteria and funguses that live in your soil. Millions, billions. Different types, different sizes, different, and they all live together. Usually the smaller ones get eaten by the bigger ones, and then the bigger ones get eaten by bigger ones, and so on and so forth. But they all need an environment that hosts them, and heat is a biological killer. It's like, just like a person, it gets to 80 degrees and it's like, oh my God, it's hot and sweaty. I need to cool off. And you go and get an umbrella or whatever. You go inside and you go into the air conditioning. And cold doesn't kill biology. Heat kills biology. Cold doesn't. They go dormant in cold, but they don't die in cold. Or dry. Wet, they don't either. It's heat. Heat is the killer. So when you take a field and you kill it, completely kill it, strip it off of all of its life with, say, glyphosate, gramoxone, or anything like that to just burn down herbicides. or disc or plow and disc that soil. You turn the soil over, you introduce oxygen, there's an explosion of life in that soil because you put oxygen in. That smell that you love so much when you turn freshly turned soil, oh, it smells so good. Believe it or not, that is the smell of death. That is the CO2 release of gazillions of now dead and rotting organisms that you killed because they ran out of food and they had plenty of oxygen to do their thing, and then you end up with less biology than you started with. Of course, it comes back, but if you kill off all that stuff on top, and there's no food, no exudates, no carbohydrate for the biology that was living on them, then they come and they say, hey, you know what? It's getting awful hot down here. And they will trigger a certain response, like a very leafy weed that is to cover the soil to cool it down so that biology can live and thrive underneath there. And of course, human beings, we come back and say, oh my God, we got ragweed. Let's go hit it with dicamba and Roundup and we'll see what happens, and we kill that off. And then eventually the cash crop, sprouts up, canopies over. And once it canopies, you ever notice that once your crop canopies, you don't have that problem anymore? There's no more weeds that are coming up because the soil is cool. Seeds, certain weed seeds like cockleburs and ragweed, they need well over 100-degree soil temperatures. Lamb's quarter, mare's tail, well over 100-degree soil temperatures to sprout. And they also need that biology to help it along. So I think I've talked enough about biology and stuff. It's a rough oversight of what I'm doing. That's why cover crops are very important, and residue management is very important. Don't till it under, just chop it up. That's why I bought the vertical tillage machine, was to actually chop up that residue, get it started breaking down, but make a nice mat over the top of it. That's why I did not harvest the wheat straw when I combined the wheat off of it. That's why I threw a lot of the smaller seed out the back of the combine so that it would start to grow. And then I let that wheat grow until the cash crop was actually up and running, just to maintain the biology that's there. That biology is very important in the decomposition of the wheat straw, which will then return all the nutrients that it took to make that straw. It will actually break that down and make that available to the cash crop. And that's very important because you got to do that stuff. When you strip everything away, you have to put it back from somewhere, whether it's in commercial fertilizers, manures, or other alternative fertilizing products like composts and things like that. You will have to put them back there, and the biology that you bring in with the compost starts the process of breaking it down, but the soil biology, when it starts to feed and thrive, will then eat the bacteria and the biology fungus that's in those composts and other types of manures and stuff like that, because they're overwhelmed. And generally when you have manure and other composts like that, the bacteria that's in that is not a bacteria that lives in the soil. It lives in compost. It's really an aggressive composting biology. And when it hits the actual soil, that's when that biology, there becomes a big war. Like, oh my God, we're gonna eat everything. So organic matter is poop from something. So as that biology eats it and breaks down, it poops it out. The carcasses die and rot. The biology in the soil that just eats all the biology that was in the compost. That's why you have a great triggered response when you put compost or any other organic fertilizers on your ground. It's because there's an explosion of life on both sides, and you really do get a good benefit from it. But that's all just part of learning how to farm for real instead of farming with chemicals. And of course I do use chemicals, don't get me wrong, but choose wisely is what I'm saying in the chemicals that you use and the products that you put this down with. I am going to try and get a seed corn next year. I don't know if I'm going to do it next year. I'm probably going to wait for a couple more years until I get a good response from the cover crops and stuff that I'm doing, until that biology that is in that soil is strong enough and the organic matter is raising up enough that I won't have to worry about seed coatings anymore. Yeah, you heard me right. No seed coatings. I've planted soybeans without seed coatings this year and last year for the simple reason neonics are devastating to soil biology. If you pull up a seed that has been coated in a neonic, you will see that the root is white. It's white, and then it doesn't really start to get that rhizosphere until the root is down another 2 inches or so away from that neonic that you put in the soil. So neonics do damage to the soil for a long time. It's not a short-term thing. That seed is coated with that, and it takes biology to break that stuff down. That's why if you, like right now, if I was to go and dig up a corn plant, one that's 10 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and I dig it up and look, you're going to see that kernel is still in there. It's mushy and it's all shriveled up, but there's still going to be either green or pink stuff on it, which is the neonic, the seed coating, the fungicide, the insecticide that they put on that seed is still going to be there because the biology can't get close enough to it to break it down to kill it. And you'll see at the very base of that stalk, the roots are still white because there's no ability for the rhizosphere to actually form around it and help it grow. It's also very important that your biology goes into that seedling right away. So as that seed sprouts, the biology will actually enter the tip of that root through the exudates. It will eat its way up through there into the plant and basically imprint itself on that plant. And that biology in the soil and the plant becomes symbiont. They work together to grow a crop that is healthy, nutritious, and plentiful. I'm going to take some walks out in my cornfields in the coming weeks on the regular YouTube channel, One Lonely Farmer, and I'm going to take you around and we're going to dig up plants and we're going to look at some ears, and hopefully my test weights come up, because that will, as the nutrition in the soil improves and the biology in the soil improves, you will get heavier and heavier test weights. I know that there's guys out there that are shocked if they get anything below 60 pounds per bushel of corn. Well, I farm in an area that's been farmed for hundreds of years longer than what you are farming in, and we are really depleted. Our organic matters are low, 1%, 2%, where they should be 10, 12%. I do have some 5% organic matters, and I've raised organic matter levels using compost and planting corn. And obviously this wheat crop as well will help build some of that organic matter. Organic matter is built below the soil, not above the soil. So if you have, a corn crop that produces, 20 tons of residue or 10 tons of residue on top of the soil, that does not become organic matter. That's just organic residue that will then be eaten and returned to the soil as available nutrients. Organic matter is built by root mass. So the more root mass that you leave undisturbed beneath the soil will help to raise your organic matter levels quickly. That's why I am looking into growing corn on corn for a few years to get that organic level up before I really start to rotate into different crops, whether it's beans or wheat. I'm using wheat now as cover crop, and I did harvest some, but soybeans grow really well in high levels of organic matter. I mean, you could get over 100 bushels to the acre if your organic levels are high and your biology is good. So we've got biology and organic matter in the soils that are gaining and thriving, and I can show you the differences in ground that was plowed, ground that hasn't been plowed and worked since 1993, I think, was the last that ground was. And the ground that has not been worked since 1993 has a soybean crop on it because the organic levels are much higher. They're in that 3 or 4% range. And yeah, I'm not allowed to put anything else in it other than soybeans and wheat. And I have done so, but these beans are a raging bull right now. They were planted on the 8th of July, and they're closing in on knee high. The stuff that was planted on the, what was it, I think it was the 15th of July. It was late. I didn't like doing it, but I did it anyway. Those aren't doing so good. You got deer pressure and groundhog pressure on the edges, but they're just not quite there. But that ground was plowed and worked just a few years ago. Anyway, I've been talking for 40 minutes, and I'm sure people are sick and tired of hearing about this stuff. But I do want to touch on one more thing, and I did mention a little earlier, is on goals, yield goals or goals in your life. So I'm going to take you back to 2017. Let's go 2017. So 2017, I'm gaining on in the hay market. I am getting ground to grow mulch hay on. I've got the mushroom companies were purchasing hay at a phenomenal rate. They were talking about moving over to straw and still maintaining the same number of hay acres and just expanding and things like that. 2018 comes along. I meet a fellow by the name of David Kaiser. He was working at the mushroom barn, a specific mushroom barn, and we became friends. We're still friends today. He came up and he worked for me, helping planting soybeans this year, and it was a great help. Anyway, I hope to have him on the farm a little bit more on the weekends and just get him, get him into farming. He misses farming. He was raised on a farm, a dairy farm, and he misses it terribly. He works in chocolate now. But anyway, so I met him in 2018, and late 2018, he asked me if I wanted to go into baling straw in North Carolina. I agreed. 2019 was the first year down there. And at that point, in 2017, I was like, 5 years from now, I'm going to be baling straw in 3 states. New York, New Jersey, North Carolina, possibly Ohio, and possibly Minnesota, Michigan. We were talking about this pretty intently through 2019. 2019 comes and goes. Things look good. 2020 comes. There was a few problems. 2020 comes. Still looking at taking over more acres, buying more balers, getting into that straw baling business, and actually just staying at the same size that I was in the haymaking business because I would be moving on. And if I bought more balers, I could send 3 balers out to do the straw job, and 2 balers could stay at home, and just hiring people on to actually make the hay at home, supply the hay at home. We had truck drivers and everything. So I had this plan, and it was a 5-year plan. I figured by this time, 2023, that I would be baling in these other states. And late in 2018, things started to change in the mushroom industry. Like, I was no longer getting paid on 2 weeks. If I took a load today, 2 weeks from today, I would get a check. Things started to change. And by 2020, I was like, you guys are really going to have to give me a price on hay before I take off for North Carolina, before I get done doing this. And I had already started planting corn in 2020. 2020, I started planting, I think it was 2020. Was it 2019? 2018, 2019, 2019? I don't remember. 2020, I guess. I was planting corn again. 2020, planted corn, 150 acres. 2022, 300 acres. 2021, 300 acres. 2022, I did 650 acres. Lost out. Had a bad year last year. It was super dry. But I'm still on that goal. I set a goal for myself. So 2018, when things started to change, I was like, I might want to start getting back into grain. The price is not bad. It's at $4 or whatever a bushel, and I can do this with compost and other alternative fertilizers and just some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years and watching other farmers in other states do their thing. So at that point, I figured, well, I'm going to start into the corn and we'll see how the mulch hay goes. So I started a plan, and the plan was to not split it in half, the hay acres versus corn acres, but to have a little bit of diversity. I didn't really want to get over 600 acres of corn in 2020, but by the end of last year, and the price of hay, the price of fertilizer, the price of fuel, the price of help, the price of everything jumped like huge. So I decided that my plan to get back into grain could be expanded, and and my 5-year goal then would be like 1,500 acres of corn, 500 acres of soybeans, and 500 acres of wheat, and the rest could be hay. With tweaking, so you've got these goals that you want to set for yourself. The hay business, I'm not getting out of the hay business. I'm actually thinking up a new scheme in the hay business. I'm in contact with a company, and they're looking at purchasing a certain type of hay. I'm not going to say what it is right now, but a certain type of hay, and that type of hay, people can guess all they want. It's not what you think it is. And the way that I would be planting this hay would be unconventional to what anybody else has ever done in that crop. So unconventional, not normal, like abnormal. Why would you do it this way kind of stuff. So I'm like, I could do this quite simply with my grain drill. Be fine, right? I got GPS. I can do this perfectly. I can plant this the way I want it to plant, and things would be good. Anyway, with that being said, there is a huge market for this type of hay, and that type of hay pays pretty well. Therefore, I won't be out of the haymaking business. I won't have to sell the balers and the mowers and everything else, the rakes. I'll be able to employ the people that I want to employ, and I will be able to just make phone calls and say, hey, come and get this. And they would be like, oh, okay, no problem. They come, they get it, a check comes, and I'm happy. I cash the check, and I can buy new balers and new hay rakes and things like that. So I've started this plan to wean myself away from the mushroom growers. Not completely. You're always going to need them. You're always going to have an outlet for this hay, because there's going to be areas or acres, or just say in total, if you don't let me plant a row crop on your ground, you can get somebody else to do it. And sometimes you have to make those decisions, because sometimes you have to make those decisions, okay? And sometimes those decisions are hard to make, but we make them, right? You have to make them. It's like, well, there's a lot of farmers like, well, the more ground I do, the more money I'm going to make. That's not entirely true. In the mulch hay business, it is true until they pull the plug on you, or they change their formula and they don't discuss it with you until after you've put the fertilizer down, and then they cut your price. So we're not playing that game anymore. They can suck my left nut for all I care. I've had enough of them being that way. So we're going to be doing these different things, and the plan is going to start to be implemented this coming spring. I might do it this fall. If I can get a couple of fields of corn off early enough, I could do it this fall. And by next summer, the first batch of this hay will come off, and I will be able to actually be able to sell it as for a decent dollar. And I can't do it on corn ground. It has to be done on the soybean ground, because the corn ground, nobody's going to want corn stalks in their hay. So I have to deal with that. And it'll be good, right? Should be good. We're going to try it out. So there's a 5-year plan there. Okay, start this year. If it works, next year expand by twice or triple it, and move other garbage hay ground out of garbage hay ground into a row crop. Build that soil up to a point where it'll support this type of hay that I'm going to be growing, and and move my operation that way. So I'll still have the 1,500 acres of corn. I still have possibly the 500 acres of soybeans and the 500 acres of wheat. I could leave the 500 acres of soybeans out of the mix and do 500 acres of wheat, put a cover crop in that dies in the fall, one that definitely dies off in the fall, or I kill it in the fall and then plant this hay crop through it that way. Therefore, I am shifting hay ground into crop ground, and then back into a hay crop that I know I have a market for, and I know I'm going to have a good market for it, and so we're going to have to go that way. So going back to doing what your grandfather did and your father did, and just being complacent with that life that they set up for you, yeah, it's easy, right? It's easy. It's like, oh, well, I've been doing this all my life. I know what I'm doing because I've been doing it all my life. And I'm going to do it exactly the same way my grandfather and my father did it, because they did it all their lives and it worked for them. Well, just like me in the mulch hay business, I started that business 25 years ago. Just growing mulch hay. It's like easy, right? It's easy. An idiot can do it. A little 2,4-D in the spring and a little fertilizer in the spring, and then you make hay all summer long, and then you market it all winter long, and then hopefully at the end of the year, when you start to make new hay, you still have a little bit of old hay left over till August, so that you can turn around and go right back into new hay over and over again. Well, the market changes. People change, the formulas change, and then 25 years later, you're like, you know what? I should be really comfortable in the price that I'm getting and my ability to grow this stuff. And I find myself starting over in a row crop rotation, and I'm looking at the mushroom barns thinking, you know what? I'm evolving away from you people. I have to, because I'll go broke. And that's exactly what will happen to these guys that are, well, my dad bought a new combine every other year, so therefore I'm going to buy a new combine every other year. Or my dad bought a new baler every other year, so I'm going to buy a new baler every other year. You have to evolve with what is going on around you in the markets. And the hay markets, I like making hay. Come on. I mean, it's what I like to do. I really do. It's a lot of work, but I'd rather get paid better for what I'm doing, and for that work, get paid better, because I do believe, honestly, I will make more off of 500 acres of this hay than I would in an entire year of making 4,000 acres of mulch hay. That's just the way it is. You'll get 3 cuttings off of it, right? 3 cuttings off of this hay crop, and you will sell the first crop will be the highest tonnage. The second crop will be a half, and the third will be a third of what the first cutting is. So there you go, and you do that on 500 acres. I can mow 500 acres in 3 days without any breaking a sweat. That means I got to get moving now anyway, because I got to mow hay today. So that's the plan, is to do that. And then I will have to haul it to them. They'll come and pick it up. If I haul it to them, which is not really a big deal, I could haul it to them and weigh it on their scales. They unload it and sayonara, see you tomorrow. I will have to put an applicator unit on my baler, which is no big deal. They sell them all day, every day. Harvest Tech still sells their Harvest Tech, and just preserve it. That way I can spray it up to, put it on at up to like 25% moisture without too much issue. And, you get anything above 25%, then you really got to dump the acid to it. But I've done that in the past, made out okay. I'm going to do it again. And we're going to say sayonara, see you tomorrow to the mushroom growers on a large scale, and just make them a minor just a minor business, because they're treating me like a minor business to them. So why not just move on, diversify corn, soybeans, wheat, hay, except the hay isn't going to be garbage hay. It's going to be nice, clean, feed quality hay, feed quality hay, really nice feed quality hay, and it'll get sold to the dairy and beef operation through a middleman. But the price at I'll be the low man on the totem pole, but I'm going to make more than twice of what I'm getting from the mushroom growers. So half the work, half the cost, and half the headache. And you don't have to worry about getting rejected because there's a weed in it, because this stuff will be weed free anyway. So with that being said, I think 55 minutes is long enough to be yammering on this thing. And yeah, just have a nice day. Be kind to each other. Don't be mean. Travis Eby is having problems with trolls clipping his videos. He's Northeast Ohio farmer. He's a young guy who's got definite challenges in his life, and he just wants to do YouTube, and he wants people to get along. And people are just being total douchebags to him. So if you do know who Travis is, don't stop watching his stuff, and don't listen to the trolls. And and Travis, I know you're watching this. Don't let those people get under your skin. They're not worth it. They're not worth it. Do everything you can to block them, report them, and then move on with your life and stop worrying about the clips and stuff that they're doing, because it just doesn't matter. They do that shit to me too. So, but anyways, have a nice day. See y'all later.